In this role, she budgeted hundreds of millions of dollars, negotiated annual purchasing contracts worth $500 million, and created a pricing strategy that added millions of dollars to her employer's bottom line. Please help me welcome Eileen Kiley. Next up is Jack Zika. Jack is a small business owner, realtor, husband, and father of two. He's a Redmond Planning Commissioner, member of the Redmond Neighborhood Revitalization Committee, US 97 South Redmond Corridor Advisory Committee, State Director of the Oregon Association of Realtors, Vice President of CORE, and has served on CORE committees including Government Affairs. Jack's also involved in community organizations including the Boys and Girls Club, Red Cross, and Habitat for Humanity. Welcome, please, Jack Zika. Okay, time to get to it now. We're going to give the opening statements. As we mentioned earlier, we did a coin flip, and Jack won the coin flip. Jack gets to go first. Jack, you have 2 minutes. Briefly tell us who you are and why you're running for Oregon House District number 53.
I am Jack Zika. Is it working? Yep, okay. I'm running for state. Okay, is that better? Okay. My name is Jack Zeke. I'm running for state representative for House District 53. I am a husband and father of 2 kids, like we said. I'm a realtor. I'm vice president for the Central Oregon Association of Realtors and also on the board of directors for the Oregon Association of Realtors, where I've advocated in Salem for affordable housing, property rights, and also here locally for affordable housing as well. I'm also on the Planning Commission for the City of Redmond, and where I've proven myself as to be pro-development, approving over 5 master plans with affordable housing and housing for 55 and over communities. I've also made the PUD process easier. It's a planned unit development process for our neighborhoods in Redmond to make them safer, more cohesive, and have parks for our children. We've also created and made it easier to have accessory dwelling units in the city limits to help out our families, our aging families, our seniors. We also did overlaying zoning and in the city of Redmond to help to make possible like Cook Crossing, the new facility that we have there for assisted living that is on top of a medical facility. So we encourage those in Redmond. And I've been a part of those. And I've been lucky to be a part of committees like the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee, where we would assess what neighborhoods need and make them safer and more accessible for our residents, as well as the US 97 South Corridor, where we would, we were helping businesses and helping traffic flow in 97. Now the legislation just passed in 2016 House Bill 4079, and this is the 50-acre parcels for affordable housing where the cities have more control to put affordable housing in there. One was Redmond and the other one is Bend. These are the only 2 cities left in these plans, and this is another where our cities are competing, and this is another example of how our land use system is failing us. We shouldn't make our cities compete for affordable housing. Affordable housing is a need for every city in Oregon. Again, my name is Jack Zika, and I ask for your vote first.
Okay, Eileen, 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you for coming today, and thank you to the Central Oregon Realtors for inviting me. I appreciate this opportunity. So, in addition to everything Lee said, which is true, I was also the 5th of 6 children in an Irish Catholic family, which means I learned a couple things right out of the gate. First of all, if you want anything, you got to speak up, because it's not a subtle environment. Secondly, you learn what's fair. In a large family, you learn pretty early what scarce resources mean. And so you're really aware of what's fair, and that is a value that I got from my family growing up. My father told me when I was actually very young that I was going to go into finance, and I said, no way am I going to do that. That's boring. My dad lived long enough for me to discover the role of the controller. And that's an interesting job title. What a controller does, it's not an accountant, it's not about debits and credits. It's about controlling the budget, literally. And a budget is nothing more than a statement of your values in dollars and cents. So my job was to help people, first of all, define their values, And second of all, live up to them in their daily decisions. It was about breaking down problems and getting to the real solutions that we needed for those problems based on our values. The reason that I'm running specifically for the House of Representatives in Oregon is because that is the group that controls our budget and particularly our revenue the most. What I want to do at this point, I'm going to just summarize this by saying I used to speaking up for people, and the reason that I want to go to Salem is to speak up for the people of Central Oregon with a strong voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Time now to get to the questions, and as we said, Jack won the coin flip, so Jack, we're going to ask your question first. You get 2 minutes to respond, and then we'll go to Eileen then, 2 minutes, and then 1 minute rebuttal each if you would like them. Okay? All right. Let's get started then. First question to Jack. Last year, the legislature came close to passing House Bill 2004, which would have allowed cities and counties in Oregon to establish rent control policies and limit landlords' ability to issue no-cause evictions. Portland has since passed an ordinance requiring all landlords to cover relocation costs for tenants who either receive a no-cause eviction or face a rent increase. And other policies are currently on the Portland City Council agenda. It looks like another battle on landlord-tenant issues is coming in this legislative session. What, if any, landlord-tenant policies do you support?
Well, I absolutely do not support rent control. You can't go start taking away property rights from owners. It reduces the quality and quantity of rentals. As soon as you start imposing this on the landlords, it's easier just to sell your property, and so then we reduce our amount of rental properties. So I didn't support 2004. I was actually in Salem to advocate against it last year, and I would be in Salem again next year advocating against something that would be similar to that.
All right, Eileen, you have 2 minutes to respond to that.
I think one of the concerns we have in housing is we do have sort of a one-size-fits-all policy across the state of Oregon. And I think there's a lot of situations in which we need to allow communities and counties to address their issues the way that they see as appropriate, and this is one of them. I'm not a major proponent of rent control either, but I do know that some cities have executed it responsibly, and I think it is up to the local community to make that decision. So I would support this, but I also want to make sure that we keep support and controls in for single unit owners, people who are actually depending on that for their retirement income or their livelihood, renting an ADU out in their backyard. I want to make sure that those people actually have the opportunity to move someone out of their house for reasons of livability because it's their own personal property that they're dealing with. There's a difference between somebody who's renting out 1 or 2 units, particularly the other half of a duplex, and somebody who is managing a large complex. And I think that our rules need to understand that those have different requirements.
All right, Jack, you have a minute to address that.
Just wanted to reiterate, rent control has been tried in other cities, but there's also a term that happens in these cities, and it's called slumlord, because the quality of rentals goes down. When you can't get fair market value for your rental, it doesn't make sense to have a rental. So the quality goes down. These landlords, they can't fix the properties because they can't afford it. A lot of the people that own the ADUs that want to rent out are on retirement, are on a fixed income. They don't have a bunch of money to fix up and make these nice places if they can't charge a higher rent. That's part of getting a rental, is fixing it up and being able to charge a little bit more to attract a certain type of tenant. And if you can't do that, then you have an ADU and you can help somebody out that you don't. So the answer is more supply, not more regulations.
All right, thank you, Jack. Eileen, you got a minute.
I'm going to agree with a good portion of that, particularly we need to work on supply. And that's one of the issues. I think the only thing that I want to reiterate is there's a big darn difference between someone renting out the other half of their duplex and someone renting, whose livelihood or entire business is about large rentals. And I think that our laws need to recognize that.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the second question, and we'll begin with Eileen this time. The unfunded liability of the state's public employees retirement system, known as PERS, is the $20 billion elephant in the room in Salem. What solutions would you support to help chip away at the pension deficit?
I'm glad that you talked about chipping away, because we seem to think that there's this magic wand that's going to make this go away. There is nothing wrong with creating a long-term liability as long as you save the money to reach it. I mean, it's like paying off a mortgage, right? So it's not going to be just one solution to it. I would like to point out that I think Jack and I are going to differ on this, but corporate taxes are on the table for me. And I will tell you that the reason that I think we need to look at corporate taxes is because I actually did the income statements for Daimler Trucks North America. That told us, are we on budget, and what do we need to do to make budget, and what are our investment decisions? And one of the things that was not included on that statement was taxes. Because large corporations don't make their investment decisions based on interest or taxes. It's all about earnings. So other issues that we're going to look at, of course, we're going to continue to negotiate and look at the pension plan and make sure that we are continuing to make it work for us. The 2003 reforms are very good, actuarially sound. That doesn't mean that we turn away and never look at it again. Whenever you have a long-term liability, you continue to review it. So we need to continue to review our existing PERS plan. We also need to look at other smaller issues. You may remember that my opponent in the primary proposed an excise tax on by-the-glass beer and wine. And the thing that a lot of people liked about that is we have no sales tax. We have very little way of having people that come in from outside of Oregon contribute to the cost of Oregon as well. So this was one issue, but we can break it down into small plans. It's not going to be just one thing.
All right, thank you. Jack, you have 2 minutes.
Well, she is right. I would disagree with her on the corporate tax part. I have a few items I could talk about that, but I'd rather get on to PERS here. PERS unfunded liability is huge, and it just raised 40% in the last biennium on our payments for our cities, counties, police department, fire department, schools. All of these government facilities have to pay a higher payment, and in the next biennium, it's going to go up another 40%. So this last biennium, we lost about 170 teachers. How many teachers are we going to lose this time because the payments are going higher? Counties are going to have to increase their permit costs. They're going to have to increase their fees for their services. So this is a big issue that we need to tackle, and we need to hit it head on. And it's part of the plan. A few of the things that we need to do. One is to change it going forward to a 401k plan. That would relieve the burden going forward. Other things that we can do is lower the cap on the highest earners. We can lower the cap now. I think I've heard Reed Bueller call it to $100,000 per year. That's one thing that we can do. That would be a great idea. We can stop spiking. So when people get close to the retirement age, they're using their overtime, their sick time, their paid leave at the end of the last couple of years. So when they average out their yearly salary, they get a higher PERS payment. We can fix that in a legislative fix. We can also take off the part-time workers. Some part-time workers, like at Parks and Rec, are just teenagers. They're just kids that are lifeguards. But once they hit a threshold of hours, we now have to pay PERS. So these kids know they don't want PERS. They just want some cash, you know. So getting those off there, changing it to 401k, stop spiking, lower the cap. Those are some great ideas that we can go away and chip away at PERS. But this is something that we definitely need to take care of because we have a whole generation of children at stake here that are going to get left behind.
Eileen, you have a minute to rebut.
Okay? So the secret of paying off a long-term liability is having enough revenue in your savings. And we don't have enough revenue in the savings. So we're going to have to do one of 2 things. We're going to have to either find additional sources of revenue, or we're going to have to cut other things that we love about Oregon. Because the Supreme Court has already told us that is a contract. You made a contract, you will live up to that contract. It may annoy us that the football coach is getting that kind of money, but the Supreme Court has told us he's going to get that money. So what else are we willing to give up in Oregon in order for us to not raise any revenue in any other way? And we need to start thinking, okay, there will be cuts, but what are we going to put on the table? Not what that guy over there is going to put on the table. Not what our public employees are going to put on the table, because that alone won't solve it.
All right, Jack, you also have a minute.
It's a big problem. Even the people that are receiving tier 1 benefits understand it's a real problem. A lot of them are making more money than when they were working. So it's about tightening our belt. It's about cutting programs and spots like I talked about. We give enough revenue. We pile a lot of taxes. We are one of the #1 states in the nation for taxes. So we need to learn to tighten our belt. We need to find money that way.
All right, thank you very much. Question number 3, Eileen, you get to start this one.
I was back over to Jack.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jack, yes, back to Jack. Jack, in Central Oregon, we often say that our issues and challenges are different than those of our neighbors on the other side of the mountains. However, the state's current land use system is essentially one size fits all. Do you believe the current land use system is working? And if not, what would you work to change if elected?
I do not think it's working. I think the one-size-fits-all land use system is broken, and what is necessarily right for Portland is not right for Bend, which is not right for Eugene, which is not right for John Day. We have all kinds of different regions. We need to have regional control of our land use laws. What that looks like the city and county collaborating together and growing how we see fit. We are protecting exclusive farm use land on the east side of Bend that has nothing but lava rock on it and can't grow anything but sagebrush. This is not the best use for this land. This could be better developed into housing and things like that. But the last UGB expansion done by Bend is a prime example of this broken system, because it took over 10 years and over $1 million to get that UGB approved. Now this time and money could have been better well spent putting in infrastructure like sewer, roads, electric, things like that, so we could better plan our neighborhoods and grow how we see fit. The state of Oregon right now is about 300,000 houses short of housing that it needs. So this is a growing problem, and it's getting worse. And you can see that by the housing prices and the lack of affordable housing.
So when SB 100 was done in the 1970s, Tom McCall's big achievement. Less remembered is the person in the legislature who really drove this for McCall was a farmer in the Willamette Valley. Because that is a precious natural resource. It is for all of us. It's a gift from God and the Missoula floods. It's the reason for the Oregon Trail. It's the reason that we came about as a state. And that is what drove a lot of that SB 100. And then some additional improvements were made to protect the coast, and we have that landmark ruling at the coast so that our public beaches are for all of us. Our natural resources in Oregon are for all of us. And so it is in our interest to continue to protect the Willamette Valley, because what the Willamette Valley does not produce, then that stress falls on this side of Oregon. And as you very correctly pointed out, we do not have the same farmland over here. I do believe that we need to look, and it needs to be a science-based look at how our regions differ. Because the wonder of Oregon is the diversity of Oregon and the diversity of our natural resources. And they all need to be done sustainably. So it is important to go over to Salem and talk with people who don't have water issues like we have, who are protecting different types of land, who have different timber, and say, I understand that, and I want to keep that protected. Please understand what the people of my district need. And this is what I want to go to Salem and do, is to not dismantle SB 100, but to help bring it forward so that we can see and really work with the diversity of the rest of Oregon, not just the Willamette Valley.
So SB 10 and SB 100 were the bills that were passed to establish the land use system. But they were also there because there was urban sprawl was happening. And so there was growth happening everywhere. So they did need to protect So I'm not advocating for sprawl. I don't think anybody's advocating for sprawl, one, because the cities and counties can't afford to build the roads like that they were doing back then. So, but we do need affordable housing, and so the system is broken, and we need to fix it.
I wouldn't exactly say broken. I would say it's not working well for us on this side of the Cascades, and that's true. And the thing to remember is that once you change land, you've changed it forever. And so we need to proceed with things like the pilot project that you mentioned, which I think is a really great idea. Instead of saying this is the solution, we actually need to look at pilot programs like that to see, is it the urban growth boundary? Is it county permitting? What is really the issue here? And we'll get a chance to talk about that more.
All right, thank you. Okay. Eileen, you get to keep the microphone.
All right.
Question number 4. Like much of the state, Central Oregon is in the midst of an affordable housing crisis. If elected, what solutions to this problem would you propose and work to implement?
And Jack and I violently agree on this. We have a short of affordable housing in this county. All markets are based on supply and demand. And we do not have the supply of houses for people who live below the median level in Oregon. In fact, you have to be considerably above the median to afford a median home in Central Oregon. But the important thing to look at is where is really the bottleneck, and we need to understand that. And probably the best way to think about it is your internet connection. If you're not getting fast internet on your computer, you might be tempted to go from your 10 megabit plan to your 20 megabit plan. But before you do that, you need to check and find out where the real bottleneck is. Because if you up the stream coming into your house and you don't take care of the bottlenecks that are in your house, it's not going to improve your speed and you just wasted money. So we need to look at where are the bottlenecks. In theory, we have a 20-year plan for Deschutes County on the urban growth boundaries in Redmond and Bend. So in theory, we have land to build on, but we're not building on it. What are the bottlenecks that keep us from doing it? Is it permitting in the county? Do we need more resources in the county so that permits can happen faster? Is it a lack of labor? Do we not have enough crews to actually build the houses that we want? And if so, why not? I'm concerned we have a sort of a vicious cycle in that we don't have the labor that we need to build affordable housing because we don't have affordable housing for the labor. So this is not a simple problem to solve. Most of these issues will actually be solved at the county. The biggest effect that the state has on this is things like the pilot program, which is great because it sets aside a 50-acre parcel and let's look and see what works.
So I think we could do a lot at the state level, actually. If we changed the land use system and had more regional control, that's one thing that we could do so we could grow how we see fit and increase the supply of housing to meet the demand. That's the number one issue. Another thing that we have is our subcontractors. The price for our subcontractors has gone up, and it's doubled since the recession. So that's our plumbers, our carpenters, our electricians, the trades like that. We have a mechanism that the voters passed. It was Measure 98, and this was for career technical education credits for our schools to be able to train these trades. Because the profession, the plumbers and electricians, they're getting older and they're not training their replacements. So we're losing those people, and we don't have anybody to do that. So the prices go up, but if we had fully funded Measure 98, because it's not fully funded right now, then we could partner up with COCC or our high schools and we could train these trades. And these are great paying jobs. So these aren't low wages, these are family wages, these are good jobs anyway. But so the last thing that we could do is, in the state, is vote no on any kind of rate, fee, tax increase that would drive up the cost of housing.
Nothing else?
Oh, here, 30 seconds back.
Well, you actually have a minute for rebuttal, and she didn't want to rebuttal.
So I wanted to talk about that Housing Bill 4079 was the pilot project. So one of my first bills that I will introduce when I get into the legislature would be to fix that. So right now our cities are competing and we do not need to compete. We can, affordable housing is a need for everybody. So it would be the first thing to do, would be to fix that bill.
Okay, keep the microphone.
Now that I want to have a good on too.
Well, you have a minute.
I'll take it.
We'll give it a minute.
The point of a pilot project is to start small. You know, it's a shame that our two cities have to compete with each other. I would love for both of them to get it. It would be great if they could. But the point of starting small is to figure out what actually solves the problem. Instead of throwing a lot of money at what we think might solve the problem, having these pilots allows us to try it out so that we can best apply our money to where it's really going to make the most difference.
Okay, question number 5 to Jack. Approximately 63% of Oregonians own a home. In 2015, these homeowners deducted an average of $2,281 on their taxes through the mortgage interest deduction, also known as MID. But the MID has frequently been in the list of possible programs to cut in Oregon. State lawmakers look to find money. Do you support the MID or feel it's an area where the state could recoup needed dollars?
I absolutely support our mortgage interest tax deduction, and Lee's right, it is on the table every year. They are trying to take it away from homeowners, and this is a vehicle that helps make housing affordable. So on one hand, you can say that, oh, we want to make affordable housing, but then on the other hand, you try to take away things that make housing affordable. So it just doesn't make sense. I absolutely would advocate to keep it, and I would fight any kind of attempt to take it.
Well, I also support the mortgage interest deduction and I've used it all of my life. If I hadn't bought a house at 26, I wouldn't have retired at 56. It's an important part of my financial security, and I think the financial security of many Oregonians. I know that we keep saying this. I'm not sure that there's not a lot of support in Salem to cut this. I'm sure it goes on the line because everything goes into everything has to be on the table when you're looking at revenue. I think one of the things that I would like to see, and this comes from living in Minnesota, where we had a homestead tax credit, in which homeowners who were full-time residents, lived in their own home, got a deduction on their taxes for living in their home. This, makes that distinction between people that are living in their home full-time, and here, of course, in Deschutes County, we have a lot of housing that is partially used because it's vacation homes. And I was one of those vacation homeowners myself for a decade, so I understand that. But I shouldn't get the same break as somebody who's actually living in that house, and I think that that is something that I want to look for going forward.
Anything? Okay, all right. We'll move on. Eileen, keep the mic then, and we'll ask question number 6. We're just zipping right along here today. What differentiates you from your opponent? What do you think is the most important distinction for voters to know?
The most important distinction is that I come from the corporate world, and that's a voice that we do not have in Salem. We've made decisions in Salem because we think companies are this way or that way, or one of my personal favorites is a corporation will leave us if we don't give them a tax break. My company actually tried that. I had to move with my company to South Carolina for 4 years. It cost us hundreds of millions of dollars, and guess what? We all moved back, or most of us moved back, and my company's built a brand new headquarters on the Willamette River because they're never leaving Oregon again. We need to get realistic about what our companies need from the state and what the state can provide. We're not here to provide capital to corporations. That's what revenue is for. What the people, the government, us, need to provide is good infrastructure, which is roads, which is utilities, which is an educated workforce. This is what business can't do for itself, and we have a right to ask for their fair share. coming from that environment, I can actually bring that voice of reason into Salem that says corporations aren't going to leave us if we ask them to pay for the quality of life that they enjoy and that their workers enjoy. When we went to South Carolina, we lined up 3 different municipalities and said, bid for it with their property taxes. We already knew where we were going to go because it was based on the cost of property. No government can give to a business more than the market can give it. So we already knew where we were going to go. We actually didn't choose the low one, and they came back at us and said, we will not cut our taxes any further. Excuse me, I'm going to finish this one sentence. We won't cut our taxes any further because we have one of the best school districts in the state, and your people want that.
The biggest difference, I'm really involved with our community. I've been on commissions and boards and really grassroots inside the community to try to get a feel of what we need. I've been on tours for our businesses to understand what they need. I've been knocking on doors to understand what our residents feel and what they feel like they've been left behind with Salem politics. You'll hear Eileen talk about revenue and taxes and corporate taxes and paying our liabilities, which means taxes. It means more and more taxes. And I am not for more taxes. I am for lower taxes, limited government, and sustainable spending. That is one of the things I want you to take from this is that sustainable spending is very important for our government. And right now it's out of control, and it looks like it's only going to get worse.
I think you have a minute.
Fiscal responsibility means living up to your commitments. And we have made commitments to the people of Oregon, which we have to live up to. The best way for us to grow our revenue is to grow our economy. And our economy grows from the base. I think we hear a lot about trickle down and a lot about how trickle down doesn't work. We don't have a trickle down economy in a capitalist society. We have a bubble up economy. We need to protect the base of our economy. That's the government's responsibility. This infrastructure that we provide is providing a base to grow a stronger economy. If we can continue to grow, then our revenue will grow organically, which is the best way to grow it. But it does take revenue to provide the services that we as a state have decided that we want. And that means we, the people of the state of Oregon, have decided. So $20 billion doesn't grow on trees. We're actually going to have to come up with that money.
She mentioned grow the economy, but you cannot grow the economy if you keep taxing higher on our businesses. One of the programs that, or bills that were passed last year or last session was Senate Bill 15, and it's fading a bit from me, but 28, I believe. It was the decoupling from the federal tax code. So what this would have done is give our Oregon businesses $250 million worth of tax cuts. And it would have helped out businesses greatly. A lot of the businesses that I went to and asked, what would you have done with that money? Is that they would hire more personnel or they would buy much needed equipment for their businesses. So this is something that we've hurt ourselves and hurt our economy. You can't grow your economy when you're hurting it by over-regulating and over-taxing.
All right, well, this is all the questions that we have, so I guess we can turn it over to the audience now, and we're gonna ask that we again keep 2 minutes on your responses to any of the audience questions. So, if you have a question, or just here's one right here.
Oh, good, I don't have a problem. Thank you. This question is for both candidates, and Jack, when they were reading the introduction for you, there was a lot of committees and a lot of boards and Boys and Girls Clubs and this and that, and I'm wondering what you are involved in right now that takes a time commitment. And also to Eileen, I'm concerned that how much time is going to be given to the people that elect you to represent us, or are you spread too thin is my concern.
Right, you are right, I'm on a lot of committees, and I have severely dropped them from the local association. I used to be on public affairs, government affairs, and a lot of those committees, and I dropped MLS executive committee, I dropped that too. So campaigning takes a lot of time, and And so I've dedicated pretty much all of my time to campaigning. I'm sure Eileen knows this too. You know, we still have to work, so I have a real estate business too that I gotta try to, you know, pay the bills for my family. But all of that, we have a board meeting in Eugene for the Oregon Association of Realtors, and I told them I can't go, but they're gonna send an alternate. So when I get elected for representative, I would pretty much drop all of that, and I would be purely focused in on being a representative.
Thank you for your question. So I retired from full-time work in 2015, which is how I have time to run for office, because it takes an amazing amount of time to run, much less actually serve. You probably are aware because from the Bend Bulletin that I'm also a ski instructor. I work in the outdoors, and I've already talked with both of my employers, and I'll just work a shorter season with them when we have our long session. So my job is to go back and work full-time for our district.
Oh, very good. Anyone else? Here's a question over here.
I can talk loud. So according to Oregon.gov, the personal income taxes are up 24%. The revenue of state income tax is up 24% over prior to the federal tax cuts. And corporate tax revenue is up 50% over the same time frame. You're saying that you need more revenue. At what point is enough revenue when 24% of personal income tax revenue and 50% gain in corporate tax revenue? At what point is enough?
Well, enough is enough when we are no longer looking at a $20 billion deficit. And of course, that's not just the state that owes the $20 billion, that's all levels of government. But we do have a responsibility out there that we have essentially turned away from for 40 years. And that's not a Republican problem or a Democratic problem. We've had Republican and Democratic governors. The Republicans controlled the House for probably about 12 years that we had tier 1. This is all of our problem. We've been taking kickers instead of building up a rainy day fund. A rainy day fund is should be about $1 billion at the end of this year. If we continue to have the wildfire seasons that we have, we can very easily go through that. Fiscal responsibility means that we are in position to pay off our debts. I'm not saying there won't be any cuts to any other program in Oregon. There obviously will be. It's how much of Oregon do you want to cut to take care of this plan that we have seen coming for 40 years and didn't take care of. So it's time to actually face up to the fact that it's going to take revenue to do this. And you're right, one of the sources of revenue is to move it from one program to another. But we're very limited in our government because of the way that we have it structured. There's the general fund and then the special use funds. And the special use taxes can only be used for the specific program that they're designated for, which is how we can have a kicker even though we have a budget deficit. So in the long run, we need a whole changeover of our revenue system, because right now we're collecting 11 times as much on individual income taxes as we are on corporate taxes. And as I already mentioned, that doesn't drive a large corporation's decisions. So I think that we need to balance that out better, and it's going to come through things like, like I talked about a homestead tax credit, balanced off with some corporate increase to help cover those costs.
And you're right. I mean, we have more money now coming in from taxes than we ever had, ever. So we need to make it work now, okay? If we start taxing corporations more, we start taxing people more, we're going to lose our businesses. They're going to go to Idaho because it's a better business environment. And not all corporations are large corporations like Nike. Thompson's Irrigation and Pump, they're a corporation. They have 20 employees. So we're not talking about these big, major corporations. We're talking about family-owned businesses as well. So when you talk about corporate tax, we are 20th in the nation already. So we're kind of middle of the road when it comes to corporate tax. But I want to remind you, but not only are these businesses paying corporate tax, they're also paying unemployment insurance tax. They're paying, if they're transit, they're paying a per mile tax. They're paying insurance taxes, they're doing workman's comp insurance tax, they have a franchise tax for their holdings, their savings that they hold. They have business licensing fees, they have retirement contributions. So they're paying a lot of money already. And I'm glad you mentioned the kicker because Measure 85 changed the kicker. So when you have a corporation and they make over what the forecasted revenue is, the kicker kicks in for us on our personal taxes. We get it back in the form of a credit on our next year's taxes. The corporations no longer get that. It goes to K through 12 schooling. So wouldn't we be better to produce an environment that was business friendly so we could get more money from our schools from kicker, we could get better jobs, we could get high paying jobs. So higher taxes is not the answer.
And,
Oh, go ahead.
we have a bubble, don't we? No, rebuttal. Darn.
Why not?
Well,
We got plenty of time, so, so do another minute.
I'd just like to clarify that he's right. You can be you can be a one-person corporation. I am. But we tend to tax based on how one files one's taxes rather than how much money a corporation makes and how much it gives back. Measure 97, flawed as it was, attempted to get to this by taxing on a gross receipts. That is also problematic because different corporations are going to operate on different margins. And that treated all corporations the same. But we need a tax plan that actually looks at how much do you make in Oregon and how much do you contribute back in Oregon. Because when a company pays property taxes here, they're contributing to Oregon. And those taxes you mentioned, yes, they are contributing to Oregon. But we don't have a good way to tax the income of corporations based on what they actually make.
Want another minute on that, Jack?
So Measure 97 is another bad idea. So gross receipts tax on businesses is just another bad way of treating our businesses. We should be promoting our business. We should be helping them out, not hurting them with these kind of taxes. We're just going to drive them out of the state. Another thing that's coming down next year is cap and trade. This is another thing that's coming that's going to hurt businesses. So cap and trade, I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's basically puts a sales tax on everything. So anybody that produces carbon is going to have to pay or buy credits for it. So when we receive all of our goods, our water bottles, our pens, anything like that, it comes in by a truck, train, plane, anything like that it causes an emission. So we're going to get a tax on that. So the cost of transporting is going to go up. So we're going to have to pay more for these products. California did the same sort of policy, and their utility fees went up immediately 120%. I don't know about you, but I'm not prepared to pay 120% more on my utility bills.
All right. Next question? This young lady.
I can speak up really loud too. Thanks. I would like you to further your comments on the taxes. And my concern is the tax question and whether to raise it or not has been going on ever since I can remember, and we still keep raising taxes. So I think that argument is just one that's kind of mute at this point. With the small business owners, they make up a vast majority of businesses in Oregon. When I, as a corporation, a small business owner, am asked to pay a tax, actually I'm for that. I think I should have to pay a tax. I'm a real estate agent and I make a really good living. And there's a lot of real estate agents here in town and throughout the state. And if they had a fair way of imposing a tax, I don't mind contributing to my state. I think my business should have a tax, actually, and I'd like to know your opinions on that.
Well, you're right. Small businesses are the lifeblood, basically, of Central Oregon. It's all mom and pop operations. If you go downtown, they're all small businesses. If you go Bend and Redmond, it's all small businesses. We don't have a big box store in Redmond to bring in the draw. So taxes can become cumbersome, though, however. So you can't tax too high. But you're right. People are willing to pay a tax because they see the benefit of it. in Redmond, we're benefiting from our parks, but our parks is part of our city, so we can actually build that in and make sure that we have parks in our master plans that we approve. So when you have something like that that's tangible and people know that it's working, yes, the taxes are good, but it's a fine line because you don't want to overtax.
So, in 2009, at the bottom of the recession, I took a $50,000 tax pay cut. And like most people at my level in the company did. And our congressperson came to us and said, oh, we'll give you a tax break. Don't worry, we'll cut your taxes. It's like, you can't cut my taxes $50,000. I don't pay $50,000 in taxes. The best way for me to get my $50,000 back is to go out and help people that need it so that they can go out to their local stores, so they can go out to Walmart, so they can go out to places where, to go out, buy, for example, buy TVs at Walmart. Because when Walmart has to buy trucks from my company, that's how I get my money back. An economy grows because the money is bubbling up through the economy. It needs to move through the economy. Government has got to provide these services or business can't continue to work. So cutting taxes is not the answer to everything. As you can see, our friends are still struggling to have housing even though we have been cutting taxes at the federal level. What we need to do is to continue to invest at the base of our economy because our revenue will continue to grow as we grow. Our revenues will consistently set a record because we have more people in Oregon, considerably more people than we had 10 years ago. So saying that we have record revenues doesn't say anything. It's how much is that revenue versus what are we delivering for our people? And we need to continue delivering for the people of Oregon.
So Oregon's main revenue stream or taxes is our personal income tax. So would you think that we would want to make this a more business-friendly atmosphere so we could have bigger and larger wages so then you can gain your taxes by that? If you have more, if the economy is bigger, if we create more jobs, you get more revenue.
No, I agree with you, but a job is not a gift. The only reason that we ever hired somebody is because we could make more money as a company. And the only reason you can make more money as a company is because there's a market out there that supports your increase in revenue. So the idea that we cut taxes on the wealthy and it drips down to the bottom has never worked and never will work. And that's not government's job. Government's job is not to provide capital to the top of the economic period. Government's job is to support the base so that we all grow.
Anyone else? Questions? Who's question? We got two questions. Good.
Okay.
I think we're all aware, federally as well as in the state, that there is a crushing student debt. I have a friend with two kids, one at, they're platypus, one at OSU and the other University of Oregon, and these girls are going to come out of college with huge debt. That impacts the money that they can spend to go out to eat, to go down shopping, to buy a house eventually, but they're not even at that point. What is your feeling about making higher education, whether it's a technical or a four-year school, more affordable and addressing this student debt problem? Thank you.
And when I went to college, I could work for 10 weeks in the summer at minimum wage and pay tuition. And today, to go to OSU Cascades, a student has to work 1,100 hours at minimum wage to pay just the year's tuition. We could also actually pay our rent and eat, not well, but we could eat our macaroni and cheese, working 20 hours a week. And this is not available to our kids today. And this is creating a debt that will affect them for the rest of their lives. There's a couple of things that Oregon already has done. I'm a big believer in the Oregon Promise, which allows our students to go to community college for the first 2 years, essentially tuition free for a very small fee. In return, they have to keep their grades up. This is an economical way for kids to start their degree. It's also a good way for students to choose something other than college. College is not for everybody. And the worst thing in the world is to take on this crushing debt, which does not get you where you really want to go in life. So we need to look at vocational training back at the high school level to help students decide, first of all, do they want to go to college? We need to look at transparency about the finances of college. These need to be in our decision-making processes, and families need to be counseled about these beforehand so that students don't necessarily take on that debt. Now we've got so many students that are already in that situation because we push for college for everybody. That I do think that we need to look at a situation to help students pay off that debt, whether it is service to the community or service in another area, or allowing them to refinance at a low-interest loan. I used to be able to get student loans for 2%. Kids today are lucky to get them for 7%. So interest makes a huge difference in that as well. If we can help underwrite that interest rate, that would be a help too.
And you're right, the student debt is huge, and it affects everybody's, all of our children's lifestyles when they grow up and they graduate or they don't graduate. And as back to the realtor, it affects your debt-to-income ratio. So when you go to buy a house, you have to equate that into your debt. There have been tries to actually try to take that out and so set it aside, and that doesn't count as part of your debt. That could be a program that would work, that would make it easier for housing, but it would also put our students in heavily in debt. So we have to be smarter about that. I am for tax credits, expanding our grant programs, and also incentivizing low-interest loans. So these are the type of programs that really help out people with their student loans. Because you want to make sure that we're improving our lives and getting better educations, and making sure our children can go through college and not be burdened down by this debt for 10 years, 20 years, however long. You know, it's crushing.
What about the prices of universities themselves, the prices of the programs?
Did you take it a second question?
So, yeah. So, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I just wanted to address that there's an interesting thing about the interest rate on student loans. Since there is a guarantee, you never get to default on a student loan. So why are our students paying market level prices for it? We've essentially, with that law, underwritten the market for student debt and made a bigger guarantee. And you know, that's kind of crazy talk. Every other program where we put a guarantee, there's a lower market. So we are essentially underwriting the student debt industry with that law. And I mean, okay, now we want to have something back. What comes back? If we're going to give a credit to an industry, then what is that industry going to give back to the people? And I think a lower interest rate would have been one of those things we should have seen. As far as pricing, I'd like to see a freeze on tuition until we get some of this under control. Because what happens is we keep cutting other programs. Raising student tuition is one of the few ways that the universities can actually increase their revenue, because otherwise the money needs to come from the general fund. And I think we've already talked about there's a heck of a lot of stress on the general fund already, because it's only allowed to fund certain projects, and it's only about a third of our budget. So I'd like to see a freeze until we come up with a better idea, because we are putting too much on the individual student for the education that we want them to have in order to grow our economy.
So I'll answer the question with a little story that I had. I went and I visited OSU Cascades, and I had a chance to talk to Becky Johnson, and I asked her that exact question. Why are the tuitions going up? Why are we doing this? And her answer was, and it's PERS. Their payment to PERS keeps going up. They have to contribute, so they have to make up the cost that they're paying, so they have to charge more for tuitions. If you do a freeze and so the tuitions can't go up, you're gonna lose teachers and you're gonna lose programs. So I don't think that's the best policy there.
So the reason that PERS is such a problem is that it runs through all levels of government. We did not save the amount of money that we should have saved for the people who are retiring right now. It's not about people who are going to retire 20 years from now. It's about the people who are retiring now and in the next 10 to 15 years. Our PERS problem actually will, the amount of PERS we're going to have to pay out will actually taper down after 20 years. But because the schools and the communities, municipalities and counties have a very limited revenue stream, they are taking money that's supposed to be used for current operations to fund this old debt. So the decisions that we made 30 years ago is what they're paying for now. So PERS does underlie a lot of the funding issues that we have at all levels of the government. It's why we can't get our roads fixed, which I hear often at the door, is what are you going to do about that road? So PERS is part of it, but a lot of it is the way that we are accounting for PERS. We are actually accounting that money in current operating funds instead of in an older long-term liability. We need to find a way to cut that off from the operating funds.
This lady had a question.
I want to, please do. Circling back to the rent control issue, one of the things, I am a rental owner, and one of the things that always is a question in my mind is when these things come up and they talk about the difference between a single rental owner versus a big corporation, that there's like nothing in between. And you talked about, well, for the retiree, well, this is my retirement plan. And after expenses and such, you're probably making about $10,000 per rental a year. That is no way going to fund your retirement. And so what about those people who are in the middle? And there's that, and also the difference between when you say, well, it's a difference if you're living on one side of the duplex, for instance. However, whether it's the owner who is living next door to a troublemaker that you need to get rid of, whether it's another poor tenant living next door to the person you need to get rid of, it's still somebody living next door to a problem. And so those differentiations don't hold water in my book. So I just like for both of you to address those issues.
See, you are in particular who we need to protect, because when they go with rent control, that's who it affects the most, is somebody that's trying to supplement their income or somebody that's trying to help out their retirement. But not only with rent control, but they're also trying to bog you down with relocation fees. So if you have a no-cause eviction, then all of a sudden you have to help relocate somebody and give 2 months rent to help relocate them. And then if you have a problem and with somebody and you don't have the ability to protect your property, you no longer have no-cause eviction. So your property, you spend a lot of money, you put a lot of money into your property, so you would like to protect it. A lot of these policies are affecting you personally, and they're affecting a lot of people, and these are bad policies, and I would always advocate against them.
And I'm going to clarify, I'm not in favor of Salem saying, oh, okay, let's have rent control for the whole state. I don't think that that's an appropriate solution. I just don't think it's appropriate for Salem to say you cannot try this in your community. So my preference would be that we allow a lot more leeway to the counties and the cities to solve these kind of problems. Because what works in Portland won't necessarily work here in Bend and won't necessarily work in John Day. And I think individual communities need to have that freedom to make those decisions. And so that's why, you know, where you live is going to be different from someplace else. And I think that you need to be able to work with your local community to find out what's right for your community, as opposed to the state making one rule that applies to everybody.
Any more questions?
Okay, I have another.
Go for it.
I would just like to clarification. When you say invest at the base of our economy, what does that terminology mean?
If, for example, we're going to do a tax cut, the way I would do a tax cut, instead of cutting the percentage at the top, is to increase the zero tax bracket at the bottom. And that is taking, so instead of taking a lot of money and putting it here, you take a lot of money and spread it across the base. So, for example, instead of one person gets $1 million, 1,000 people get $1,000. And the reason for that is then you're supporting your base, and that money is going to bubble up through the economy, so everyone gets the benefit of it. And that's what I mean by it. Social Security, for example, is meant to be a safety net that we don't fall below. So you and I have been paying into Social Security, and if you're a small business owner and you're paying self-insurance tax, you're paying Social Security, you're paying both sides of it. So we have paid for that, and that's why we need to support programs like that to make sure that nobody falls below the bottom. Because the less people have, I mean, it costs what it costs to live. And if you do not have those resources, then you start to qualify for public assistance. So by protecting the base, then you're actually shifting more into the economy and less onto the taxpayer. For example, again, minimum wage. We have significantly higher minimum wage than the federal minimum wage. If you're only making the federal minimum wage at 40 hours an hour, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, you qualify for almost everything in federal assistance. Here in Oregon, because we have a higher minimum wage, you don't qualify for most of those things. For example, you don't qualify for the Oregon Health Plan if you're working 40 hours a week as a single person. So that is shifting the responsibility for living wage into the market instead of onto the taxpayer. So that's the kind of support that I would like to see.
I think I've made it known that I'm not for higher taxes, but the investment that I would like to see is more affordable housing, better jobs, incentivize businesses to come here so we can get more jobs, be a more business-friendly environment so we can have more commerce and build our economy, and then people can afford housing because we have more supply to meet the demand. Those are the things that I think we need to do to invest in our economy.
Okay, here's a question.
Oh, I was just going to say, being business friendly isn't just about isn't just about your tax policy. Being business friendly is about having an environment where your people want to work. The essential reason that my company failed when it tried to move to South Carolina is because people didn't want to leave Oregon to go to South Carolina. We were not able to attract the quality of worker that we needed in order to be profitable to our business. So when we're talking about a business-friendly environment, we're talking about things like roads and schools and parks and our beaches, where we want to go, these kind of things. So a business-friendly environment is not strictly about taxes, because a large corporation like mine that's following the international accounting and controlling standards is not going to make their decision based on taxes.
Okay. So in the Planning Commission for Redmond, we have tried to make what Eileen's talking about. To attract businesses, you have to provide certain things. Like for a tech company, they want parks. They want you to be walking distance of parks. They want to have concerts. That's why we have Music on the Greens on Friday. They would like to be 30 miles from Mount Bachelor. So as the city of Redmond and our economic development department, we're already making the community business friendly. So when I say business friendly, I mean not bogging them down with heavy regulations and burdening them with higher taxes. That is not business friendly.
Okay, time for one more question to make sure that we're done on time here today.
What are your thoughts on addressing the traffic issues in Central Oregon, especially during the summer vacation season, tourist season?
Thank you.
So the traffic can become an issue, but having lived in Houston for a little bit, that's some serious traffic. We have 10 lanes, interstate, and it takes you 2 hours to get across town. So I come from Redmond down to Bend, and I'll sit for 10 minutes at the Cooley light there to get through because it's backed up to the cemetery, but I'm also like, oh, dang it, because I want to get there. But then I think about it, I sat here for 5 minutes. it's not too big of a deal. But we are, they just passed the traffic bill, and so there's going to be an overpass put in over there at Cooley. The city was trying to get federal matching grants to do reroutes, but so there's plans that we can do to try to help the roads at a state, that from tax, revenue to help out.
And again, we violently agree about Cooley Road overpass. We need to start the parkway up at Cooley Road and take it through there. But that doesn't stop it. In Redmond, getting from Glacier down to U can also be several minutes, 2 to 3 times as long as you think it should take. Hopefully, once Canal is fixed, that will take some of the pressure off. But we really need to do long-term planning in the Redmond area as well, so that we could potentially take that bypass over to the airport instead. That's going to take state and federal money. There are other roads that are county roads, and so we also have to remember that some of these issues are state and some of these issues are county and city. And I would like to be able to work with our county and city governments to figure out what the state can actually do in order to help them with their planning.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that Boulevard South corridor. That's the corridor, the advisory committee that I'm on. So I'm currently working on trying to make that a better. And yes, Canal's construction has put a spotlight on our traffic, especially during the fair. If you came through, you sat in traffic for 5 or 10 minutes. So we are currently in the process of talking to our businesses, and what we'd like to do is make it a boulevard, where you have trees down the middle of it and a couple extra lanes on the side. But as you know, as it gets to veterans, it starts to funnel in, so it becomes a harder problem to fix. So we are currently trying to work on that, but the reroute is something that's going to cost millions of dollars, and it's going to take about 20 years because ODOT doesn't do anything quick. So the reroute is not really necessarily the way to go. We have planning in the future, sure, but right now we really need to take care of what we have right here and change it into a boulevard and to help out our businesses and the flow of traffic.
What about Bend? That's all Redmond. What about Bend? What about the railroad crossings? What about Wilson? What about Big Market Park?
This is District 53 we're talking about now. Penn is District 54, most of them.
Yeah, so whose job is that? Whose job is those railroad crossings?
We drive through
We just got in there.
Well, and there's a lot of those railroad crossings, they go between like the inner city part, the city part of Bend, that is 54, but at like Cooley, that's 53, and south of town, that would be 53. So that would be like an ODOT fix. So that would be something that we would work with them at the state. That could be something that would be brought up, yeah.
But this is also a situation where ODOT really needs to work with people who understand the local geology and the local traffic patterns. When 97 came through the bypass in Redmond, it took the pressure off of 5th and 6th Street downtown, but it also greatly reduced the access of emergency vehicles to the east side of Redmond. And that will restrict the livability of that side and our ability to develop into it. So, we're not even done there. I mean, we probably need another overpass up in Redmond as well. But it's working to understand. When ODOT comes over to this side of the mountains to work, we need to make sure that they're also paying attention to our quality of life issues and also our geology, so we do not have any more overpasses to nowhere like we had the last time around.
All right, I'm gonna have to ask that we,
I'm in your district, and I'm in Bend, I'm in Northeast Bend. So these are not necessarily Redmond issues, they are Bend issues.
okay. I'm sorry, we're gonna have the closing statements now, if you don't mind. So Jack, you get 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Well, thank you everybody for coming out. I really appreciate everybody's coming out here and supporting us and listening to all the issues. But what I can't stress enough how important affordable housing is to the community, quality affordable housing is to the community. I would like to share a report conducted by Habitat for Humanity that was done Children that are raised in a house that their parents are purchasing are 90% more likely to graduate high school, and they're 120% more likely to go to college. And we all know that we have a failing education system. We are third worst in graduation rates right now. And what is the highest payment that you make every month? It's your mortgage payment, it's your rent payment. And the path that we are on right now, it's not going to get any better. We are on the same path as Lake Tahoe and Aspen. We're going to do work here. You can no longer afford to live here. Oregon, like I said, has a 300,000 house shortage. That's how many houses we need to build to help fix our affordable housing, to help homelessness. I mean, this is a big issue. We need to help change our land use laws and create a bigger supply to meet the demand. And higher taxes is not the answer. I have advocated in Salem to protect property rights, to fight for the mortgage interest tax deduction, to fight against rent control. And I would like to do that in Salem for you. I would like to fight for Central Oregon and advocate for us there as well. My name is Jack Zika, and I ask for your vote in number 6. Thank you.
What I love best about Oregon is the diversity of Oregon. And I'm not just talking about the diversity of the people, I'm talking about the diversity of the geography. And geography has an effect on how we view the world. When I became an executive and got coaching for to be ready for my bigger role, one of the things that I was coached on is to hire people who thought differently than me. I don't need more people who think like me. I need people who see things differently than I do, so that I can see a problem 360. So we avoid decision-making in our little bubble of people who talk just like us, look like us, think like us. There is a voice that is missing in Salem, and that's a voice of understanding that corporations think differently than individuals and small businesses. And we need to have that voice at the table. I am here to advocate for our people and to bring a different point of view to Salem. I think this is the most important thing that I can do, is to speak honestly about money and how we make decisions about money. I think the other thing that I bring is my background in talking to people who don't agree with me gets at good solutions. Ideology is not going to solve the hard problems that we are facing as a state and in our community. Listening to each other and working together is how we're going to actually get the best answers. And so going forward, I would like to have the opportunity to speak for you, to let you tell me where I'm wrong, and ask me to help you change things. So I'm Eileen Kiley, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you to both of you. In my 30 years of journalism, I can say this, I've covered a lot of candidates, I've covered a lot of elections, and I gotta say, I think no matter who wins, I think District 53 wins with either of you. I can say that honestly. So I'd like to ask you to give them a round of applause. I appreciate your candor and your intellect and the answers that you gave. I hope you folks can appreciate that. Little housekeeping issue. The next debate will be right here, 1 p.m. on the 27th of September. That's a week from Thursday. And that will be the mayoral debate for the city of Bend. So we didn't have a lot of fireworks today. We're guaranteed to have some a week from Thursday. So hopefully all of you can come in. Thank you again.